Derek Nwosu was halfway through cross-checking quarterly sales data in his Lagos office when his phone began vibrating on the desk. He glanced at the caller ID, Grace's school. His heart jerked. Something in him knew this wasn't just a routine check-in. He answered in a heartbeat. "Hello, Mr. Derek speaking." A voice, female and panicked, came through with the urgency of a siren. "Sir, your wife. She's been in an accident. A bus hit her right outside the school gate. It's bad. She's been rushed to St. Cecilia's emergency." For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. The report file slipped from his hand. "What?" he whispered, his voice hollow. "Thank you. I'm on my way." He didn't wait. He didn't explain to his secretary, he just ran. The streets of Lagos blurred as he sped through traffic like a ghost in a storm. The horns, the screeches, the yelling all distant. He could only see her, Grace, her laugh, her sharp wit, her tenderness, the mother of his girls, his partner in everything. "Please let her be okay," he muttered again and again. When he burst into the hospital's main hallway, his face was wild with fear, his breathing ragged as he approached the desk. "My wife was brought in, Grace Nwosu. She was hit by a bus." The nurse's face tightened. "Please wait here. The doctors are working on her." He collapsed into a cold plastic chair. His hands shook. Moments later, his 12-year-old daughter, Amara, came running with her arm wrapped tightly around her younger sister, 7-year-old Zoe. Both girls were crying. He pulled them into his chest and held them as they trembled. "It's okay, baby. Daddy's here. Mommy's going to be okay." He called his younger brother and asked him to pick up the girls. They left reluctantly, wiping tears as they looked back. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor entered the waiting room with a face that made Derek's stomach drop. "Mr. Nwosu?" He stood at once. "Yes, I'm her husband. Is she?" "She's alive," the doctor said, but his voice carried a weight. "Your wife suffered major trauma. Her spine took a severe hit and both legs have sustained compound fractures. We've stabilized her, but she will require orthopedic surgeries and extensive rehabilitation. It's going to be a long, difficult journey." Derek's chest collapsed with relief, but the words didn't truly land until the doctor said, "She's sedated. You may see her briefly." He walked into the ICU and saw her. Grace, unmoving. Her skin pale, tubes running into her arms. Machines beeped in mechanical rhythm around her. He reached for her hand, cold and limp. "I'm here, baby," he whispered. "You're going to be okay. We're going to get through this." 3 surgeries followed. Derek never left her side. He learned to feed her. He carried her from the bed to the wheelchair. He cleaned her. He combed her hair. He became her shadow. After discharge, their bedroom was relocated downstairs. He moved to the sofa nearby. The first few weeks he was a warrior. He woke early, took the girls to school, bathed Grace, cooked, cleaned. He refused help. But slowly, exhaustion slithered in like dusk. He thought about hiring a maid, but a memory stopped him each time. 3 years ago, they had hired a live-in housekeeper named Lavina. She had seemed perfect, efficient, respectful, sweet with the kids, until they caught her stealing money, screaming at Zoe, even touching Amara inappropriately. It had scarred the whole family. Grace never forgave herself. Since then, Derek vowed never to let a stranger live under their roof again. So he took it all on himself. Every meal, every bath, every diaper change, every emotional breakdown. His younger brother helped occasionally. Grace's only sibling, a sister in Canada, was supportive but distant physically. Derek never voiced it, but the weight was crushing. He started coming home late, ignored calls, sometimes pretended to sleep when Grace called for help at night. Guilt gnawed at him, but so did resentment. Then, one afternoon, Grace's best friend, Angela, came by. She had been out of town when the accident happened. When she saw Grace in a wheelchair, her breath caught. "Oh, Grace," she said, kneeling beside her, "you don't deserve this." Grace offered a faint smile. "I'm still here. That's what counts." Angela took her hand. "You're the strongest woman I know." Derek stood nearby, silent. Angela had always been close, too close. Over the next weeks, she came more often, bringing groceries, massaging Grace's legs, helping the girls with homework. She'd bring dinner, play music softly. Sometimes she'd look at Derek a little too long, smile too warmly. One night, Derek found her washing dishes in the kitchen. "You really don't have to do all this," he said. She turned, still scrubbing. "I want to. I can't bear to watch my best friend suffer alone. And I see how much you're carrying." Her eyes held his. He felt seen. It was dangerous. The nights got longer. Grace cried quietly, thinking he was asleep, asked if he still loved her. "Of course," he'd whisper, but the words were empty. One night, Angela stayed late. The kids were upstairs. Grace was asleep. Derek sat on the porch swing, face buried in his hands. Angela joined him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're doing so much," she whispered. "But who's taking care of you?" Her words cracked something open. He broke down. She held him. That night, he slept in the guest room, alone, or so he told himself. From then, their bond deepened. Texts, late-night calls, her fingers lingering on his, glances that said more than words. And when she kissed his cheek one night, he didn't stop her. He kissed her back. Then came the secrets. Hidden moments, passionate nights behind closed doors. Derek lived two lives, one as a weary husband and father, the other as a man chasing something that felt like freedom. 3 months later, Derek stood at his office window, staring at the company name on the wall, D&G Clothing. Derek and Grace. She had left her banking job to build this with him. Her savings, her heart, all poured into their dream. And here he was, trying to feel something, anything. But he felt empty. Grace barely spoke. Her eyes were dull. The girls no longer laughed the same. That night, he made a decision. The next morning, he packed one suitcase, left no trace, only a note. "Grace, I can't do this anymore. I'm starting over with Angela. I'm sorry." She woke to silence, his side of the closet empty. She read the note over and over again, then screamed. Screamed so loud the windows felt like they would crack. The girls heard. They cried too. That night, Grace called her sister. Through sobs, she explained everything. The betrayal, the silence, the weight. Her sister cried too, then said, "Hold on, I'm sending help." The next morning, a nurse named Rita arrived, followed by Mrs. Beatrice, a retired cook. Rita monitored Grace's vitals. Beatrice cooked, cleaned, braided the girls' hair. They made the house warm again. But Grace was gone inside. One afternoon, 8 months after Derek left, Rita was taking her vitals when Grace whispered, "Maybe it would have been better if I had died." Rita froze. "Don't say that." Grace looked at her. "What's left of me?" Then she collapsed. Pale, weak, dehydrated, depressed. The ambulance came. The hospital fought to keep her alive. Rita never left her side. When Grace finally woke up, the first thing she did was cry. Loud, broken sobs. "I gave him everything," she said, "and he left me to rot." Behind the curtain, a man heard her. His name was Benjamin Afalabi, a 55-year-old widower visiting a friend. Her words shattered something in him. He stepped forward. "May I?" he asked, pointing to the chair beside her bed. She stared at him, but didn't protest. He sat. "I'm sorry. I couldn't help overhearing," he said gently. "6 years ago, I lost my wife. Cancer. I begged God to take me too." Grace's eyes softened. "Why are you telling me this?" He smiled gently. "Because maybe I'm supposed to sit here for you, the way someone once sat for me." And for the first time in months, Grace let someone in. Grace didn't know why she let Benjamin sit beside her that day. Perhaps it was the gentleness in his voice, the tired wisdom in his eyes, or maybe it was because something inside her had finally given up fighting the silence. For months, her body had healed slower than her spirit, and her spirit was still bleeding. She watched him speak, barely listening at first, until he said one sentence that broke through her numbness. "Someone once sat with me when I didn't want to live. I'm just passing it forward." She didn't ask questions. She just nodded, and he didn't push further. He didn't offer shallow comfort. He didn't say she'd be okay. He simply showed up again the next morning, bringing with him a thermos of hot tea and a paperback novel she used to love before the accident. "For the quiet hours," he said with a small smile, placing it on the table near her bed. Nurse Rita raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Over the next week, Benjamin returned daily, sometimes with fresh flowers, sometimes with fruit for the girls, sometimes with just his presence. He never stayed long, never overstepped, but he stayed just enough. One evening, as Grace stared out the hospital window watching the sun sink behind the noisy Lagos skyline, she whispered, "Why do you really come?" Benjamin, seated quietly beside her with a book in hand, looked up and said, "Because you remind me of someone I couldn't save. And I see you still want to live, even when you say you don't." She turned her head away, but her lips trembled. The next morning, Grace's sister Uju called from Canada. "I've made arrangements," she said firmly. "You and the girls are coming here. Benjamin has agreed to handle the medical side. He has contacts. I've booked the tickets. You'll fly out in 3 days." Grace didn't argue. She was too tired to fight. On the morning of departure, Mrs. Beatrice packed their bags, helped dress the girls, and braided their hair into neat cornrows. Benjamin came to see them off. He didn't say much, just handed Grace an envelope with their itinerary, a card with the name of the hospital in Toronto, and whispered, "Take your time. Heal. I'll be here." Grace nodded, unsure if she'd ever see him again. At the airport, Zoe clutched her mother's hand tightly, while Amara looked around nervously, her backpack strapped too tightly to her shoulders. As they boarded the plane, Grace closed her eyes and whispered, "Let this be a new beginning." Toronto met them with cold air and warm arms. Uju stood at the arrival gate, eyes filled with tears, arms wide open. "You're here," she breathed, hugging her sister tightly. The girls ran into her embrace. Grace was taken directly to a specialized rehabilitation hospital, while Uju brought the girls to her home, a modest bungalow near Scarborough. The rehab center smelled of antiseptic and hope. Her first session started slow. Her limbs were stiff, her back ached, and every attempt to move felt like betrayal. "You don't have to run," her physiotherapist Darnell would say. "You just have to stand today. Tomorrow we'll try to walk." Grace wanted to scream. Her body didn't feel like hers. She had dreams of dancing with her daughters again, of running after Zoe's bicycle, of cooking in her own kitchen. But her reality was cold metal bars, parallel supports, and endless pain. Days turned into weeks. She cried in secret at night, burying her face into the stiff pillows, whispering Derek's name and hating herself for it. But something shifted in her during the second month. During a hydrotherapy session, she stood unassisted for 12 seconds. Darnell clapped. She burst into tears, but they weren't sad ones. They were proof. She was still in there. In the third month, she took 5 steps on crutches. On the 5th month, she walked across the therapy room unaided for the first time. The staff gave her a standing ovation. That night, Uju cooked a goosey soup and jollof rice. The girls danced in the living room while Grace sat watching, laughing so hard she cried again. But this time, the tears were healing her. Benjamin never stopped checking in. He sent voice notes, books, encouraging texts, but he never asked for anything in return. He just said, "I'm here, whenever you're ready." On the 6th month, Grace was cleared to return home. She could walk with forearm crutches and perform most tasks independently. When Uju asked, "Where do you want to go?" Grace answered without hesitation, "Home, Lagos, the same house. I'm not running from my past." And the flight back was quiet. She held her daughter's hands the whole way. When they landed, Benjamin was there, waiting, clean-shaven, in a gray linen shirt with eyes that lit up the moment he saw her. "Welcome back," he said, helping her with her bags. "You look taller," she joked, and they both smiled. Returning to the house was surreal. It smelled the same. The curtains hadn't changed. The pictures on the wall still included Derek's face. She stood in the living room and exhaled deeply. "We start again," she said aloud. Mrs. Beatrice resumed work. The girls returned to school. Grace continued therapy with a clinic Benjamin recommended. He visited often, never forced himself. But when he came, he brought peace. They spoke about everything childhood, dreams, books, even music. He told her about his sons in Canada, about the woman he lost, about the silence that followed. She told him about her fear of ever being loved again. "I'm not looking to be saved," she warned one night as they sipped tea on the balcony. "I know," he replied. "I'm just walking beside you." One evening, under a dusty golden sunset, he held out his hand. "Walk with me?" They moved slowly through the garden. Her crutches clicked against the stone path. Flowers bloomed around them. "You gave me my life back," she said softly. He stopped. "No, you fought for it. I just stood close." Then he looked at her differently. The air shifted. His voice lowered. "Grace, I've watched you rise from ruins with a grace I've never seen. And though I didn't plan for it, I find myself wanting to walk the rest of my life with you, not as your rescuer, as your partner. I love you." Her chest rose sharply. She stared at him, mouth slightly parted. "I was broken," she whispered, "and you treated me like I was whole." He reached for her hand and kissed it. "That's because I saw the woman behind the wounds." Her eyes shimmered. "Yes," she said, the word barely audible. "I will marry you." 3 months later, in a small private ceremony attended by only close friends and family, Grace Nwosu became Grace Afolabi. No paparazzi, no crowd, just soft jazz, candlelight, and love in the air. Uju flew in. Benjamin's sons came down from Canada. They called her Ma before the day was over. Grace moved with her daughters into Benjamin's estate in Ikoyi, a mansion with marble floors, wide gardens, and rooms filled with sunlight and serenity. She sold the old house and placed the proceeds into a trust for her daughters. Benjamin registered her as co-director of his foundation for women rebuilding after betrayal. He gave her an office key and said, "Whenever you're ready, the desk is yours." He gifted her a silver SUV, customized with adaptive driving features. As her life slowly fell into rhythm again, the only missing piece was a driver to assist with school runs and hospital visits. Benjamin's HR team screened candidates carefully. Grace didn't attend the interviews. Until one morning, a knock came at the door. The housekeeper led a man into the lounge. "Please wait here," she said. "Madam will see you shortly." The man stood straight, dressed simply, nervous. Grace came down the stairs slowly. Her crutches tapped lightly on the marble. She turned into the room and froze. Standing there was the ghost of her past, Derek, her ex-husband, the man who left her to rot, the father of her daughters. His face drained of color. His cap slipped from his fingers. He opened his mouth, but no words came. They stared at each other. Then she took one breath, steadied herself, and said calmly, "You must be the new driver." Derek's lips trembled. "Grace, I didn't know." She turned slightly. "Come, let me show you the car." Outside, she pointed at the SUV. "That's the car you'll be responsible for. It must be clean, fueled, and never leave the compound without my instruction." He stared at the ground, speechless. For a moment, she watched him. He turned and walked away. Didn't ask for anything. Didn't try to explain. Just walked. And Grace watched him go, not with hatred, not with anger, but with the calm of a woman who had already buried the past. Derek Nwosu didn't remember how he got home. The drive from the Ikoyi estate to the cramped one-room apartment he now rented in Ketu was a blur. He didn't recall the conductor yelling from the roadside bus, didn't feel the weight of the scorching Lagos heat pressing against the window of the Danfo, didn't notice the chaos of the streets or the honks of impatience. All he could see was her Grace. Standing at the top of those marble stairs, her posture tall and proud even with the crutches, her eyes sharp, calm, and unreadable. She hadn't flinched, hadn't blinked, hadn't even shown a hint of shock. That hurt more than if she had screamed or cried. It meant she had already buried him in her heart, already healed, already moved on. He pushed open the creaky wooden door to his tiny room and stepped inside. The mattress lay limp on the floor, its cover stained from months of sweat and grief. A rusted fan sat in the corner, whirring weakly, barely fighting the heat. A single chair, a plastic bowl, and a pile of worn-out clothes in the corner were all that filled the space. Derek slumped onto the bed and stared up at the ceiling. His chest felt tight, his throat dry, his palms clammy. The silence in the room pressed into his skull like a brick. He rubbed his face with both hands, as if trying to wipe off the past, but the past clung to him like an oil stain. Grace had risen, and he had crumbled, not slowly, not in stages, but in one breathtaking, humiliating fall. 3 years ago, when he walked out of their home, he had believed he was stepping into a new life. He and Angela had booked flights to Portugal with the money he made from selling the company he and Grace had built. The travel agent told them, "As long as you have short-term visas and some bank records, you'll be fine. Just look confident." Angela looked more than confident. She looked thrilled. In Lisbon, They checked into a 4-star hotel with a balcony overlooking the coast. Angela laughed loudly, wrapped in her new silk robe, twirling with joy. "Can you believe we made it, baby?" she asked, wineglass in hand. "This is it, a new life, our empire." Derek smiled back. For a moment, he believed it. The guilt of leaving Grace had been muffled by the new smells, the sights, the softness of foreign linens and Portuguese sunrises. He had paid for everything in advance, 2 months of hotel stay, designer dresses for Angela, luxury spa treatments, expensive handbags, new wigs, facials, perfume. He handed her his debit card without hesitation. "What's mine is yours," he said. "We're in this together." For the first few weeks, Angela was sweet, affectionate, calling him her king, whispering dreams of a European skincare brand, promising him he'd be the man she'd always needed. But then she started going out alone. "Business meetings," she'd say. "Girls' networking events." She'd return with strange scents on her skin, makeup smudged, new lingerie in her bag. One night, Derek confronted her. She laughed. "You're acting like a jealous husband. Relax. We're not even married." Her tone was sharp, her eyes colder. The next night, she didn't come back at all. He stayed up texting, calling, no reply. When she returned in the morning, she said she got tipsy at a wine tasting and crashed at a friend's place. Her phone was dead. Her lipstick was smeared. He didn't believe her, but he said nothing. He was too afraid of the silence that would follow the truth. Then, one evening, he followed her, watched from across the street as she walked into a bar beside the beach promenade, dressed in the same red dress he had bought her. He saw her laughing at the table with a white man twice her age, her fingers stroking the rim of his wine glass. He waited. They left together, arms linked. The next night, he followed again. This time, she kissed the man. Derek's vision blurred. His heart pounded. He stormed into the bar. "Angela!" he barked. She turned, startled. So did the man. Derek grabbed her wrist. "Who is he?" "Let go of me," she hissed. "I've been watching. You've been lying." "You're insane," she snapped. "You're not my husband. You're just the fool who funded my vacation." That slap came instinctively. Her scream was louder. The bouncers came. The police were called. In a city where he had no rights, no network, no voice, he was arrested, charged with assault, and thrown into a holding cell. Angela denied everything. "He's a stalker," she said. "He followed me here. I was being polite." The court didn't ask many questions. The slap was enough. He served 90 days in prison. No visitors, no calls, no Angela. When released, he was deported. Nigeria welcomed him with noise, sweat, and a stamp of shame in his passport. No money, no home, just memories. For months, he drifted between couch surfing, small jobs, shame too deep to even speak. He landed in K2, rented the small room, and tried to forget it all. But forgetting Grace was impossible. He saw her in every strong woman on the street, heard her voice in the morning prayers from the neighbors' radios, felt her strength in every silence that didn't break him. He was scrolling aimlessly on WhatsApp one night when a message came from a foreign number. "I'm sorry for everything," it read. It was Angela. The message continued. "Grace and I were childhood friends. I envied her. Always did. The husband, the kids, the business. When she got into that accident, and I saw you collapsing under the pressure, I saw an opening. I took it. I wanted what she had. But in Portugal, something changed. I realized that if you could leave a woman who gave you everything, You could do worse to me. I left. I started over. I hope you heal. Goodbye." Derek read it 3 times, each word slicing deeper. His hands trembled as he dropped the phone onto his lap. Then he wept. Loud, bitter sobs, not just for Angela, but for himself, for the empire he destroyed, for the daughters he abandoned, for Grace. That night, he stared at the cracked ceiling until dawn. At 5 a.m., he opened WhatsApp and searched for her number. He had deleted it long ago, but his memory betrayed him. It was still there, engraved into his bones. He found her profile. The picture froze him. Grace sitting on a velvet chair, Amara on one side, Zoe on the other. All 3 wore soft blue gowns, smiling brightly, their eyes shining. She looked radiant, regal. He hovered his thumb over the chat box, then began to type. "Hi, Grace. I know I don't deserve to be messaging you. I've thought about this moment for a long time. I just want to say I'm sorry. I was blind, foolish. You gave me everything, and I gave you nothing but pain. Thank you for raising our daughters, for not letting them suffer because of my stupidity. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to become a man they can be proud of. Someday I hope I can see them, tell them I love them, and tell them I'm trying. Derek." He stared at the message for 10 long minutes, then pressed send. 1 tick, then 2. Delivered. She had received it. Grace was sitting in her new office at the foundation when the message came. She read it. Once, twice, then locked her phone, looked up at the framed photo of her and the girls on the wall, and let out a slow breath. She didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The woman who once needed closure now understood something deeper. Closure wasn't given. It was built. And she had already built hers. Grace Afolabi stood before the full-length mirror in her home office, adjusting the collar of her ivory blouse. Her forearm crutches leaned against the wall, unused for the moment as she shifted her weight gently onto her own legs. After months of therapy and relentless practice, she had begun walking short distances unaided. The strength wasn't just in her legs now, but in her spine, her voice, and her presence. She heard soft knocks on the door. "Mom?" It was Amara. Grace turned, smiling. "Come in, baby." The girl peeked through, eyes bright. "Your car is ready. Mr. Aide just pulled into the drive." "Thank you, darling," Grace replied, reaching for her silver walking cane instead of the crutches. She walked slowly down the hallway, each step measured but graceful. The cane tapped gently against the wooden floors, a reminder of every battle she had won. Outside, Aide opened the SUV door. "We're headed to the Women's Summit at the Civic Center, right, madam?" "That's right," she nodded. The car rolled through Ikoyi traffic as Grace gazed out the window, her mind replaying the speech she was scheduled to deliver. She had been invited to speak on resilience, not because of what she'd survived, but because of how she had chosen to rebuild. As the car pulled up to the Civic Center, cameras flashed. The crowd parted. She stepped out calmly, her cane tapping against the marble entryway like a rhythmic anthem of survival. Inside, the hall was filled with women of all ages, business leaders, survivors, advocates, students. Grace sat on stage, listening as others shared their stories. Then her name was called. She rose slowly, approached the podium, and let the silence settle before she spoke. 3 years ago, she began, I was carried into a hospital on a stretcher. I had just been hit by a bus. My body was broken. My spirit was worse. The room went silent. The man I had built a life with, raised 2 daughters with, and built a company with, left me. Not during my strength, but at the moment I could not walk, could not feed myself, could not protect my children from the pain. He left, and I thought that would be the end of me. She paused. Faces stared back, eyes wide, hands covering mouths. But it wasn't. I learned something in those months of silence and darkness. I learned that healing doesn't start when the pain ends. Healing begins when you stop expecting the person who broke you to fix you. The room exhaled all at once. I didn't fight to win him back. I didn't chase closure. I became my own closure. Applause started softly. Today, I walk again, not just with legs, but with purpose. And more importantly, I help women like me find the strength they forgot they had. Thunderous applause. Women stood, clapping, cheering, some wiping tears. A line formed after the event, women wanting to hug her, to speak with her, to simply say, "Thank you." Back at home that evening, Benjamin returned from a board meeting to find Grace in the garden, watering the plants slowly. He kissed her temple from behind and whispered, "You were extraordinary today." She smiled. "You heard?" "Of course. The whole city heard. You are their voice now." That night, at the dinner table, Zoe announced she wanted to become a therapist. To help girls like Mommy. Grace laughed, eyes glistening. Amara chimed in, "And I wanted to start a podcast. Daughters of Grace." They all laughed, and Benjamin raised his glass of sparkling juice. To daughters who are the future, and to the woman who taught them what it means to rise. And the next morning, Grace sat in her office at the foundation, an airy space filled with books, sunflowers, and photos of women she'd helped. She scrolled through her emails, paused, then opened WhatsApp. Derek's last message was still there, unread since the day he sent it. She stared at it for a moment, not with pain, not with anger, only quiet peace. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Across town, in his small room, Derek refreshed his screen for the 100th time. Nothing. He lay back, sighing. Then, as if moved by instinct, he took out a worn notebook and began writing. Not to her, but to his daughters. Letters he'd never send, at least not yet. In them, he poured everything he wished he had said. Grace, meanwhile, sat down for her weekly foundation session with the new client. The woman, shaken, sat across from her. "I heard your story," she whispered. "It gave me the courage to leave." Grace reached for her hand. "Then you've already taken the hardest step." They talked for hours. By the end, the woman smiled for the first time in weeks. Later that week, Grace was invited to appear on a televised panel about women in leadership. As the cameras rolled, she answered each question with clarity and conviction. A segment from her speech went viral on social media. "You can lose everything and still not lose yourself. Your worth is not defined by who stays. It's defined by how you rise after being abandoned." The video amassed millions of views. Young girls quoted her. Mothers shared it. Survivors wrote to her from around the world. One email read, "I'm in India. My husband left me after I became disabled. I was going to end my life until I saw your video. Thank you, Grace. Thank you for surviving." Grace printed the email and pinned it to the wall in her office. She looked at it every morning. One evening, Benjamin invited her to the rooftop of their home. Soft music played. Candles lined the railing. The girls peeked from the hallway, giggling. Benjamin took her hand and said, "We've walked a long road, you and I. I don't know what lies ahead, but I promise to walk beside you through all of it." She leaned into his embrace. "You already have." The sky turned a deeper blue. The stars blinked gently overhead. Grace looked out over the same city that once held her lowest moments, now bore witness to her triumph. And as she stood there, cane in hand, heart wide open, soul at peace, she realized something profound. She had once prayed for closure. Now she stood as the proof that healing is not about forgetting the pain. It's about remembering your power. She had survived not to prove anyone wrong. She had survived to show others what was possible. And in doing so, she had not only written her own ending, she had rewritten the beginning for countless others.